Okay, so today I'm going to show you some water scarcity tools you can use with GIS and cover some basic GIS skills. So, as the basis of this, I'm using the World Resources Institute water risk atlas that you can see here, and it's called Aqueduct. You can just find it by Googling it. But they've basically looked at all of these different kind of variables and used them to come up with an overall map of water risk. So there's a lot more you can read about it, but here's what it looks like. So we are going to do this in ArcGIS Online, and that just means that there's a whole lot more we can do with this information. So let's start by opening a new tab and just going arcgis.com. You actually don't have to sign in for a lot of this, but it's a good idea because then you can save your map. And if for some reason it's not working or you're not able to do some of the functions, it might be because you don't have the right permissions set up, and you'll need to get that sorted with whoever runs your ArcGIS account in the organisation tab. Okay, cool. So we're going to go to map. And you want to make sure that it looks like this, otherwise you're in Map Viewer Classic. So if it doesn't look like this, there should be a thing up here that says Open in Map Viewer, which is the new version. Okay, so first we're going to look for some information from the World Resource Institute. And so we'll come up to Add, going to go Browse Layers, and there's two choices here. My content is only going to be available if you are signed in. Living Atlas is like a specially curated content that's kind of a higher level of authenticity, I suppose, whereas ArcGIS Online can be made by anyone, but it's got a lot more available, so we're going to use that. And then we're going to search for that layer, so I'm just going to type in WRI, World Resources Institute, and Aqueduct, which is the name they've used for this program. I don't think it's anything to do with actual aqueducts. Cool, and you'll see there's a couple of options. This looks like the most up-to-date one, but it seems it's not got all information. This one's a little bit old. This one looks like it doesn't cover the whole world. This is just certain information. This one's probably okay, but I'm going to go to this one because it's a little bit more up-to-date, 2021. And when I click on it, I can just see where it came from, and it seems like there's a lot of metadata here describing where the information came from, so I can count, or I can assume that that's probably a reliable source. So then I'll go add to that. Okay, so the first thing that you've probably noticed when I zoom in is that it's all the same colour. And that's simply because we haven't told it what information we want it to display. So I'm just going to close these panels and show you what I mean by that. So each of these shapes, I believe, is a catchment area or a basin, and if you click on any of them, we've got these pop-ups that tell you all of that information that was in the documentation that we saw earlier. So some of the basins don't have names, like this one. How much is consumed. These abbreviations are explained in that documentation. This is actually, you might have noticed, it's SHP on the end of the layer name. That signifies that it's a shapefile, which is a slightly older format of spatial data. One of the consequences is you can't have long field names, so it's common to see abbreviations. But GW, I think, is groundwater, storage, seasonal variation. These are the different industrial uses that demand a lot of water, etc., etc. Total amount of withdrawal, so lots of information there. So we need to tell ArcGIS which of these things we want it to display. sometimes layers don't have pop-ups or they don't have all of that information. So a more reliable way to find it is go into layers if you're not there already. Click on show table. And this brings up all the information that's stored in this database. So, and if I go right to the end, here's the one that we're interested in. So OWR is overall water risk category, and it gives a nice sort of descriptive indication of the water situation there. So that's what we're interested in, and that's what we're going to show on our map. Okay, so I'll just get out of there for now. Might be worth noting when you have several layers here, whatever layer is highlighted, so whatever layer has this blue strip, is the one that you are making changes on. That might be important for later. Okay, so we want to tell it what we want it to display, so we're going to go over here to styles. Just got the shape icon. And then go field. And this will bring up all those fields from the table that we saw earlier. And as I say, we're going to go down, search for it. We want OWR, overall water risk category. Takes its time. Okay, we got there. So again, some closest panels. And you can see there that it's a okay map. We can see some patterns. It's got the categories that we chose to display here. But you might have noticed it's not very intuitive. So we've got low to medium at the top and extremely high at the bottom. So the first thing we're going to do is make this make sense. So open up the styles panel if you haven't already. And scroll down to types, unique symbols. So that means each of these categories has a unique color. I'm going to click on style options, and you can see where these squares are. We can just drag these into the order that we want to show them in. Cool, okay, sweet. So now our categories are displayed in a more logical order, but the colours still are not that intuitive. So when you're displaying numerical data, the computer knows that 10 is higher than 8 or whatever. So it will automatically adjust the colours to reflect that. So 10 would automatically come out as a darker colour. But the computer doesn't know that extremely high means extremely high. So we need to change this manually. So just quickly, if you click on here, this little pencil icon, this allows you to make changes across the whole layer. So for example, I might have remembered my preferences from last time, because you might have an outline color which makes you see lots of grey lines, but you can click this and it will get rid of it. You can also change lines again. You can also change the outline width, and right, because I've got no color, it's taken these other options away. You can see here that you can change the fill transparency. I actually wouldn't bother changing it here because there's a better way to do it, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay, cool. So we now need to change these colors individually. So I'm just going to show you. We could go for any one of these, but we'd still have the same problem. They're not very intuitive. And as I say, if we were dealing with numerical data, it would give us color schemes that went from darker to lighter. Okay, so in that case, I'm just going to click on here, extremely high first, and I'm just going to choose a color that I think sort of conveys the idea of being extremely high. Put it on the side. I'm going to go for that color, high risk. I'm going to go for that color. Yeah, it's a bit of is a bit subjective deciding what colours to go for, and it kind of comes with practice, but if you are working as a GA analyst, then this is what you would do every time you make a map. I found if I go too bright, it just looks a little bit too fiery and it's a bit sort of hard on the eye. So I'm just choosing slightly more kind of greyed out colours this time. Yeah, especially yellow can look quite intense, so I'm going to make this quite a muted sort of grey yellow. Gonna do. That'll do. Okay, and no data. Grey. Okay, cool, I'm not quite happy with that. I think my medium and low are a bit too similar, so I'm just going to fix this up a little bit. Cool, alright, that looks better. And again, you might want to change it some more. Okay, so that's step one.